Hey there. So, in a world that often feels really overwhelmingly noisy, just chaotic, finding those moments of calm, of focus, it can feel like, well, searching for a needle in a haystack sometimes.
Yeah, it really can. We're just constantly bombarded, aren't we? Information, distractions, all these external pressures.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, like, what if sound wasn't just noise we needed to tune out? What if it was actually maybe a guide inward?
Hmm.
Could it help us find that quiet place, behind all the mental chatter?
That's really the core question behind this deep dive today.
Right.
We're exploring sound meditation and not just uh, passively listening,
Right.
but actively experiencing sound as, well, a powerful tool for inner connection, maybe even healing
Yeah.
and just navigating life's challenges.
Okay. And for this dive, we've pulled together quite a stack of fascinating sources. We're drawing insights from texts like Echoes Within, The Art of Sound Meditation.
And echoes within, somatic sound and inner journeys, too.
Right. And digging into some history of instruments and exploring perspectives on how we physically feel sound in our bodies, not just hear it.
Absolutely. So our mission today is to unpack these sources with you, understand the core ideas behind using sound for this kind of inner work, explore some, well, surprising connections between sound, body, and mind,
Yeah.
and really distill what's most important for you to know about maybe leveraging sound for your own well-being.
Okay, let's unpack this.
So maybe let's start with the basics. Like, how do these sources actually define sound meditation?
Good place to start.
Well, they describe it as using an acoustic soundtrack, essentially, to guide a journey within, helping you connect with that deeper inner self.
Okay, so it sounds like the ultimate goal is pretty similar to a lot of meditation forms, right? Finding that peaceful space that exists behind the constant stream of thought.
Exactly. Just getting a little quiet from that monkey mind, as they sometimes call it.
Yeah, the monkey mind.
And the sources point to immediate physical effects when you engage with this practice.
Like what?
Well, your breathing often naturally slows down. Brainwave patterns can actually shift towards more relaxed states,
Hmm.
like alpha and theta.
Ah, okay.
Importantly, your nervous system starts to regulate. It can activate the vagus nerve and the parasympathetic nervous system, that's your body's natural rest and digest mode.
The opposite of fight or flight.
Precisely.
That nervous system piece feels huge, especially today, given how much stress we all seem to carry.
hmm
And the general benefits mentioned in the sources are, well, pretty compelling. Think reduced stress, less anxiety, better nervous system regulation.
Yeah. Emotional regulation too. Maybe even reduction in blood pressure, improved sleep, better mood, improved focus.
These are exactly the outcomes people are often looking for when they turn to meditation, aren't they?
They really are. But
Mm,
the sources also make it clear it's not just about sitting perfectly still and, just listening passively.
okay.
They talk about sound and music also functioning as active meditation, which sounds a bit different.
Active. Yeah. How so?
It's not necessarily about silencing the mind through sheer force, but engaging with sound in a way that helps you achieve that same goal, finding stillness behind the thoughts.
Active sound meditation. Yeah, that feels a bit counterintuitive to the usual image of sitting quietly, eyes closed. What are some examples the sources give?
Well, one really simple, accessible example is the humming breath practice. It's a yogic technique, Brahmari pranayama, sometimes called bee breath.
Be breath, okay.
You just inhale and exhale through your nose, make your exhale maybe twice as long as the inhale, and you hum gently on the exhale.
Ah, so the vibration you create becomes the focus point.
Exactly. The sound you make becomes the anchor. Mantras or affirmations, repetitive sounds or phrases, they fall into this category too.
Makes sense.
And the sources even list practicing a musical instrument as a form of active sound meditation.
Really? How?
Just that intense focus on creating the sound, on listening to it, that process itself can shift your state of mind.
Huh. That really opens it up for so many people, I think, who might struggle with traditional silent meditation.
It really does. And this active element connects beautifully with another key idea in the sources, the somatic layer.
Somatic, meaning the body. Yeah.
Exactly. Relating to or experienced in the body. So what happens when you add sound to a practice that specifically focuses on the body?
Okay, so how do we experience sound physically, beyond just hearing it with our ears?
That's where somatic sound meditation comes in. It kind of integrates all those general meditation benefits we talked about.
Right, the stress reduction,
Yeah,
focus.
all that. But it adds this heightened body awareness, a stronger sense of feeling grounded. and it can even help reduce feelings of dissociation.
Dissociation, like feeling disconnected from your body or reality.
That feeling.
Okay.
Tuning into how sound vibrates or feels within you would naturally pull your attention right into your body, anchoring you.
Yeah, I can see that. You'd have to pay attention to physical sensation.
Exactly. And the sources propose that adding sound or music can actually act as a kind of healthy shortcut to a meditative state.
A shortcut. Interesting.
Yeah, it provides a structured yet fluid experience, a soundtrack, if you will, for relaxation or emotional release, catharsis, or even transformation.
Speaking of transformation, the sources talk about a deeper purpose behind this practice, helping people find a healthy escape. Now, that might sound counterintuitive again. Escape.
It does a little, but it's not framed negatively here. The urge to escape, they argue, is tied to our nervous system. It's part of our survival instincts, the flight response.
Ah, okay, so the urge itself isn't bad.
The sources suggest the urge is okay. It's where we try to escape that matters.
Hmm.
They contrast seeking escape outside ourselves, maybe through substances or constant scrolling or even toxic relationships.
Things that can have pretty self-harming consequences.
Right. They contrast that with meditation. The sources suggest meditation offers this unique kind of escape, an escape into ourselves.
An inward journey.
Yeah, an inward journey
Well,
to what some might call the higher self, or maybe a source within our own consciousness.
and sound becomes the guide on this internal journey. It provides that soundtrack, acting like a guided meditation, but without necessarily needing specific words or instructions.
Exactly, which is fantastic for people who find, verbal guidance maybe distracting or just not their thing.
Yeah, I know people like that.
Sound is described as a kind of universal language in these texts.
Yeah.
It seems to connect deeply with our subconscious mind in ways that bypass our usual analytical thinking.
So it's not about running from the world in a harmful way, but moving into yourself to find a place to recharge, rejuvenate, and access that potential for transformation by connecting with those deeper subconscious levels.
Precisely. And the sources get really interesting when they delve into specific instruments and experiences, like working with gongs.
Ah, gongs. Okay.
The idea presented is that the unfamiliar, often spontaneous sounds of gongs can uniquely carry you deep inside yourself.
I remember reading that anecdote from the addiction treatment centers mentioned in one source, participants reporting the experience felt like a drug trip, but without the drugs.
It's a really powerful image, isn't it? And the sources suggest this intense experience could be linked to the brainwave states induced, potentially entering the theta range.
Theta waves.
Yeah, which is common in deep meditation, but also associated with psychedelic experiences. So there might be a neurological link there.
What makes the gong experience so unique, according to the material?
Well, part of it is that a gong's sound is apparently deeply influenced by its environment, like where it's placed in a room, the acoustics of the space, even temperature and humidity.
Really?
Yeah. These factors affect the overtones, the complex secondary sounds, meaning the sounds produced are truly never quite the same twice. Each session is unique.
Fascinating. And connecting back to the body, how exactly are we feeling these gong vibrations? Not just hearing, but actually feeling them.
Right. The sources explain this ties into our cutaneous mechanoreceptors.
Cutaneous mechano. Okay, break that down.
Yeah. Basically, little nerve endings in our skin that sense vibration. Think about standing near a really powerful speaker at a concert.
Oh yeah, you feel the bass in your chest.
Exactly. That's a perfect analogy. You don't just hear it, you feel it rumble.
Got it.
Our skin is essentially a sensory organ for sound vibration. These nerve endings send electrical signals up to the brain. So sound is processed by our nervous system, both through our ears, the auditory system, and through our body, the somatic system,
Yeah.
independently and together.
Wow.
The term sound bath, which you hear a lot,
Yeah.
likely describes this very experience of being sort of bathed in palpable sound vibration.
That makes so much sense now. Okay, beyond gongs, the monochord is mentioned. That sounds historical.
It is, and the sources give some really fascinating historical context. The monochord was apparently a standard teaching tool in music education way back in the Middle Ages and Renaissance.
What was it used for?
Its purpose was brilliant, actually, to turn abstract mathematical ratios, which are fundamental to music, like the relationships between notes, into something empirical, perceptible.
How?
Well, you could see the length of the string being plucked or bowed, and you could hear the resulting pitch. It directly connected the numbers, the ratios, to the sound.
So it made these abstract concepts tangible for students learning music theory.
Precisely. It helped them understand pitch, intervals, how notes were derived by ratios, and even complex tuning systems. It really brings these historical concepts to life when you think about it.
Definitely.
And the sources also note an interesting difference here. Instruments like gongs or singing bowls, often used in sound meditation, frequently aren't strictly tuned to Western musical systems.
Unlike, say, a guitar or a flute.
Exactly, which are typically built around systems like equal temperament or just intonation. This difference in tuning can contribute to a very different listening experience. Maybe less about familiar melody, more about raw sound texture and vibration itself.
Okay, that distinction is important. Now, shifting gears a bit, the sources make a really powerful connection between all this sound, body wisdom, and resilience, and even trauma.
Yeah, this was a significant thread. They ask a pretty fundamental question. Why do some people experience PTSD after a traumatic event, while others don't seem to?
Right. What makes a difference?
And they propose resilience as a key missing link. Resilience isn't just about being tough or toughing it out.
No.
It's defined more as the sources of strength individuals can draw on to integrate adverse experiences into a healthy, well-adapted life, as opposed to maladaptation, like being stuck in constant fight-flight or having a perpetually dysregulated nervous system.
So what kind of strengths are they talking about? What builds resilience?
The sources list things you might expect, but it's good to see them laid out. Things like mental and physical health, strong family and friend support, mentors, healthy activities, generosity, even spirituality.
A whole ecosystem of support.
Exactly. Building these resources helps you navigate challenges more effectively.
And a really powerful idea the sources emphasize is that trauma doesn't just live in your mind and your memories. It lives in your body.
Deeply ingrained.
It communicates through physical sensations, maybe persistent muscle tension, chronic pain, other signs of, well, disease.
This ties directly into what the sources call somatic communication, basically. The capacity to understand the subconscious messages your body is sending you all the time.
Like learning a language your body already speaks.
That's a great way to put it. They frame it exactly like that.
And they even mention ancestral or collective trauma, suggesting it affects us all to some degree.
Yeah, the idea of these deeply ingrained patterns, perhaps linked to epigenetics, changes in gene expression, without changing the DNA sequence itself. These patterns can unconsciously filter our perception of the present.
Causing us to react to perceived threats that aren't actually there.
Right, which is a hallmark of complex trauma. It can be subtle, like feeling unexplained tension or anxiety in certain situations or around certain topics.
So how do we work with that? How does integration happen, according to these sources?
Well, integrating trauma, according to these texts, requires feeling the original emotions associated with the past event, not suppressing them, but crucially, doing so while staying anchored and present in the now.
Feeling it, but not being overwhelmed by it now.
Exactly. And somatic methods are highlighted as particularly powerful for this, precisely because the body holds so much of this memory and wisdom, both from our personal history and potentially these ancestral lines.
That makes sense. The body remembers.
It does. And the sources also offer a caution here against spiritual bypassing.
Spiritual bypassing, what's that?
Using feel-good platitudes or, forced positive thinking, just look on the bright side, as a way to avoid confronting uncomfortable inner shadows.
Avoiding the difficult stuff.
Yeah. The sources suggest trauma isn't something to just avoid or pave over. It holds wisdom waiting in those shadows, ready to be integrated into our awareness.
So turning towards it, not away.
Which leads to the core tenets of somatic sound meditation, specifically for trauma integration, as presented. First, recognizing that trauma resides in the body. Second, using body awareness, often guided by sound, to increase sensitivity to that somatic communication. And third, trusting that the body holds deep wisdom we can learn to tune into.
That's a really hopeful framework. Okay, another concept the sources address is the monkey mind. That feels pretty relatable to most people, I think.
Definitely. The Buddhist term, essentially, for that unsettled, restless, often confused state of mind. It can be the inner critic, the voice of the ego.
The one that chatters away constantly.
Yeah, easily distracted, creating internal tension, stifling creativity sometimes.
So how does sound help with that specifically?
Well, the sources share a specific anecdote, relating back to gongs again, actually. Participants reported that the sound seemed to just shut down that restless monkey mind.
Really, just cut through it.
Yeah, bringing them directly to that quiet place behind their thoughts, even really persistent, anxious ones. The idea seems to be that the intensity and unfamiliarity of the sound disrupts the usual mental loops.
That's fascinating. It's almost like giving the mind something else so compelling, maybe even overwhelming, to process.
Yeah.
That it doesn't have the bandwidth for the usual chatter.
That could be part of it. And a profound purpose of somatic therapies generally, which sound can support, is helping us tune in to the much slower pace of bodily functions compared to the racing mind.
Slower pace. Like breath, heartbeat.
Exactly. Simply bringing awareness to your breath, your heartbeat, sensations in your body, that simple act of observation can start to slow down the mind's activity, shift brainwave patterns.
And potentially downregulate a hyped up nervous system.
It helps you shift your attention behind the stream of thoughts and just rest in awareness, in being.
So it's not about forcing the mind to be quiet. It's more like letting the body gently guide the way to stillness.
Beautifully put, yes. The sources also lay out some broader principles, kind of distilling things down for therapeutic sound work and somatic body wisdom.
Okay, what are those?
For therapeutic sound work, they list 3 key ideas. First, that sound waves themselves can be inherently soothing via those skin vibration receptors, the mechanoreceptors we talked about.
Right, the physical feeling.
It's a form of neuroception, how our nervous system subconsciously assesses safety from environmental cues. Feeling the vibration can be inherently calming.
Okay, makes sense.
Second, healing is seen as fundamentally self-generated. The body has its own incredible healing capacities.
Right.
And sounds are viewed as tools to support that latent process, not as magic cures themselves.
So the sound facilitates, but the body does the work.
Exactly. And third, linking back, a person-centered approach is essential because the body is constantly regenerating. Cells renewing at different rates means you are literally, as they put it, a moving target.
A moving target.
Yeah.
So generic one-size-fits-all approaches might not work effectively because your biological system is always changing.
That's the argument.
Yeah.
Precisely. And this principle leads them to critique what they call the fallacy of frequencyism.
Ah, yes. This was a really interesting point in the material. The theory that, like, specific frequencies can destroy things like cancer cells.
Right, that specific idea. The sources state pretty clearly there's no peer-reviewed, replicated scientific evidence supporting this claim.
Okay.
And their working theory for why it's likely invalid links directly back to that moving target idea. Living cells, they argue, constantly change their structure and therefore their resonant frequency as they grow, divide, and die.
Ah, so the magic frequency wouldn't stay magic for long.
Exactly. The specific frequency that might theoretically affect a particular cell at one moment wouldn't necessarily work the next, and almost certainly wouldn't work universally across different people or even different cells in the same person over time.
That biological perspective makes a lot of sense when you put it that way. Okay, and what about the principles for somatic body wisdom?
3 complementary principles there. First, the body is a profound source of information, like a walking library, holding not just recent experiences, but also potentially epigenetic memory and pre-verbal memory, things learned or passed down before we even had language.
Wow. Deep information storage.
Yeah. Second, the body communicates, but often below the level of our conscious cognition, through sensation, posture, subtle shifts, what others might broadly call body language, but it's internal too.
Stuff we often ignore.
Very often. And third, somatic meditation practices, including those using sound, help us learn to tune into this subtle body communication for personal development and, as we discussed, trauma integration.
These principles really elevate the body, don't they? From just being a vessel carrying the mind around to being the source of deep, inherent wisdom.
We really do. And finally, the sources kind of broaden the scope beyond just personal practice, beyond the meditation cushion or the yoga mat. They suggest that while those practices are valuable, the real practice, you could say, is how we actually show up in our day-to-day interactions, how we treat one another, especially regardless of our differences.
Ah, taking it off the cushion and into the world, that shifts the focus from solely inward to outward action and connection.
It does. And a simple but profound guiding principle offered for this is just kindness, described in one source almost as the secret to success, abundance, and inner peace.
Kindness. Simple, but maybe not always easy.
True. Bringing it back to where we started, the sources suggest that sound work, this inner listening, can help bring our consciousness back to a kind of true identity, that connection to our core self. Sat Nam in yogic terms.
True identity.
Yeah. And referencing that C.G. Jung quote about slow growth into the vast, immeasurable sea. It feels like a beautiful metaphor for this ongoing inner journey that practices like sound meditation might facilitate.
Wow. We've really covered a lot of ground today, taken quite a journey through these sources, from the fundamental idea of sound as a guide inward, exploring how our bodies feel and hold wisdom, connecting that to resilience and healing trauma, navigating the restless monkey mind.
Yeah, and even touching on the history of instruments like the monochord and those broader principles for living.
We've seen how sound meditation can potentially guide us inward, how the body holds both wisdom and trauma,
The crucial connection between nervous system regulation, resilience, and healing.
and how practices like somatic sound meditation offer this unique, healthy path for self-discovery and maybe escape inward.
Absolutely. It provides, I think, a really practical framework for understanding these complex inner experiences, using something as accessible as sound and simply paying attention to your own body.
So thinking about all this, what really stands out to you from this deep dive? Maybe consider this idea that our bodies are constantly communicating with us, holding both ancient wisdom and our most recent experiences.
Yeah. The sources suggest that simply by tuning in, and perhaps sound can be a helpful tool for that tuning, we can potentially access a depth of knowledge about ourselves that was previously held, maybe unconsciously, in the shadows.
What might your body be trying to tell you?